All right. So hi, everyone. Welcome to our trade show planning meeting. So we still have lots of people probably popping in, and that's all good. I'm Shannon. You guys probably know me. I'm at the University of Calgary. But today, Jennie and Katrina are going to walk us through how they prepare for the trade show, and give us some insight into their process and different things to think about. Yeah, both of them are widely experienced in this area, and I'm sure they've got lots of great things to share. I'll just ask everyone to stay on mute unless you've got a question. If you can raise your hand, then I can. When these guys are sharing their screens, they can't see the hands raised, so I'll make sure that they know you've got a question, and we'll interrupt them and then ask that question at an appropriate time if that works for you guys. And I'm going to just turn it over to them, and we'll get rocking. Sound good? Yeah. Away we go.
Okay, I'll just start off. So I am Katrina. I am the general merchandise buyer at Dalhousie University Bookstore. I have been the buyer here for about 6 years, and before that I used to buy for trade books, actually, for a department store. So again, my background is not in clothing and in giftware, so that is why I started doing quite a detailed pre-show analysis. I find it really helped me make very informed decisions going forward and be incredibly prepared whenever I went to the show. So that is one of the main reasons why I kind of go a little over the top with analysis. And again, that's just my way of doing it. I know there's a lot of people on this call that have a lot more years experience than I do, and I'd love for them all to kind of chime in with how they plan and prepare. And Jennie, did you want to just kind of chime in and give a little bit of a preamble of your background?
For sure. I'm Jennie Giebel. I'm the merchandise manager here at the UVic bookstore. I've been at the bookstore in this role it's coming up on 10 years. And before that, I've been at the bookstore for 17. And also I come from fashion though, so I was a visual merchandiser at the Gap before that. So that's kind of my side of things. I'm very terrible at public speaking, so Katrina is going to be doing the majority of that.
I don't believe that for 1 minute, but okay. I don't mind taking the lead on this. So again, if anybody wants to just kind of put comments in the chat, I will be doing a little bit of sort of interactive bits throughout the presentation. I want this to be as interactive as possible. As I said initially, we're all learning and we're all continuing to learn, and these are just ways that Jennie and I use, and I'm sure there's other great ideas out there as well. So I'll just sort of kick off. Just another quick note that both our bookstores, U of Vic and Dalhousie, are what we would call medium-sized universities. So we both have around 21,000 full-time enrollment. Okay, so just a brief introduction. The presentation is going to be broken up into 3 main chunks. The review section, a little bit about trends, and you're planning for the future, so next financial year and as well as for the trade show. And I know there's going to be quite a hefty trends session. I think it's next week, so that's great. So this is really just what Jennie and I use to look at what the trends are, and hopefully there'll be a more in-depth presentation that'll give us a bit more insights at that time. Okay, so when you go about doing your review, like this for me is really where the financial nitty-gritty is. Like our end of financial year is at the end of March, so I really run financials from April to the end of December. I create this report pretty well like the last 2 weeks of December and in about a week in January. And I actually compile a report that I then present to my director so that she is well aware of what my plans are, my financial plans, as well as what my buying plans are before I go to the show. So I review the goals that I've set forward for this present financial year. So whether or not it's to add new brands, to do category expansions, and what my forecast was versus what my actuals are. So those are reviewed on a monthly basis, but we're really just looking at April through to the end of December. So this year I introduced Yeti, for big brands anyway, it was Yeti and Nike. So that was in my plan, and I had budgets allocated, sales budgets allocated to those about 12 months ago. And the categories that I wanted to expand on, part of that had to do with the Indigenous Games and really expanding our sales in the summer of Nova Scotiana product. And then in this section here, really sales and profit is when I really dive down. It's mostly clothing, because clothing is our largest category, which I think it probably is for most people on this call in general merchandise. So I look at the core stock. So really, as a general guideline, we have about 80% of our store, which is core. And what does core mean for anybody new on the call is really, it's just a rinse and repeat. We pretty much, it's your bread and butter. This is where you get the bulk of your revenue from. And it doesn't change year over year. It pretty well stays the same. And then there's 20%, which is new. So that's really the product that you're going to be looking at the show to help like fill your floors is 20%. So it's either seasonal colors, different logos, different silhouettes, or different styles. And that really keeps your store kind of fresh and new, so when it brings people back into the store. So when you do, you might want to do several different drops of new seasonal items. And again, it's a way to bring people into the store. So, and it's also just taking note of what seasonal item did you bring in this financial year that just flew off the shelves. Some people don't repeat seasonal. Some people will take the same sort of silhouette and style and change the colors or change the logo on it. And I also even look at my core style. I always say that core has to pay the real estate, it has to pay its rent. So if it is, if for whatever reason, like our colors are black and gold, gold is not a strong, it doesn't look good on everybody. So sometimes the gold color, it just does not get the sales. So I'm very happy to remove items from core and add seasonal items that are becoming stronger and stronger every year. And so that then just becomes part of our core. But I think you have to not be shy at calling your core if it's just not performing. You just want to get it off the shelves. And I can't actually see what's underneath this. So who knows what's the last bullet point? I'm not sure what it is because I now have a, oh here, top logos and colors. So again, that's going on about, you can have great products and great products and brands in the store, but if it doesn't have a great logo or the logo can really cannibalize your sales. So for me, this year I brought in the organic Peace Fleece through MD Sport. I'm really trying to push the sustainability angle of products in the store. That whole range didn't do really, really well for us, but I'm not going to give up on it because I really think the logo is a dud. So I will try that again next year and see if I can improve the sales by changing the logo on the product. And again, it's the third part here is kind of like a vendor scorecard and really looking at your vendors. Which vendors are just super easy to deal with. So the product shows up when it's supposed to. There's a full size run there. The invoices are there. Receiving loves it when the product comes through the back door. Everything's pre-priced. It's just easy. So, and then which vendors have not delivered on time, deliver split sizing, can't, trying to do a repeat takes forever. And if there is a quality issue, are they really easy to get credits from, or do they basically say too bad? And then I also look at vendor performance at a sales and profit level. So this year costs have gone up. And I have noticed that our markdowns have gone up as well. So when I will look at the margin per vendor this year versus last year to figure out whether or not there are any trends there. Because if vendors are not profitable, you either have to try to negotiate better costs, which is a little difficult, or increase your retail. And I think there is a ceiling to how much we can charge for a hoodie before students stop purchasing. So, and just another thing I want to talk about sales and profit from the review, I look at high level, so how clothing's doing from an asset perspective, and I drill down to department as well as section. So that will really help inform how much money, if you want any of those areas to grow, how much money you need to allocate going forward.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, I was just going to say, any questions there? Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in for a sec. The one other thing about vendor performance, definitely use your peers and ask each other if there is something you're wondering about. And I don't mean to say like, oh, let's slam the vendors or lift them up. It's more of, do you get ticketing on these items? Is this provided? Because there's sometimes you might not know that it costs nothing to have all of your price barcodes on these items from some vendors. So, I mean, I didn't know that I could do that through a couple of vendors until last year when I talked to my peers. So definitely reach out and ask us or ask each other to find that out.
And then there's certain vendors, the only one I know off the top is actually Varsity, that will size sticker your products for you in advance. So depending on how your store is laid out, some stores hang everything. Our store is predominantly folded except for our feature walls in which things are hung. So that is very helpful for us to have things size stickered before it arrives in the store. And other stores will fold to your dimensions, which is also helpful because our whole store is folded. So I find, like, yeah, whatever vendors, and then there's vendors that will pack and hold. There are also vendors that will do a stock management program for you. So I know for one of my goals this year was not to run out of stock. Like 2 years ago during COVID and there were shortages, it was just very difficult to get stock. So that was one of my plans for growth, which was not to run out of stock this year. And we did not. So, but yeah. So does anybody else have anything they want to pop into the chat or have any discussions about what else that they might review to kind of plan for next financial year and for the trade show? No? Okay, moving on. And just let me know if I'm going too fast and if you want me to slow down too. So the next sort of pillar is looking at trends. So as I said before, this really is anything that can impact your sales growth, as well as trends, fashion trends. So what are you going to buy to fill up that 20% of your assortment plan, which is seasonal, and that can change. You may have 3 drops a year of seasonal product or 4 drops a year of seasonal product. So what is that going to look like, and when is it going to come into your store? So this is just a high-level view of what I look at for trends. There's definitely more items there, but I think it's really important, specifically the macro trends. What's going on out in the universe that can impact sales. So right now, what I am seeing in our store is definitely the inflation, the interest rate hikes, and is this economic crisis. We are really teetering on the cusp of a recession. So whether or not it's going to hit us as much as it hits the normal retail, we won't get hit as hard, but I do think that we will be impacted. So people will buy 1 sweatshirt probably instead of like 3 or 4 in your store. So I think it's important to be aware of what's going on in the larger retail scope. And just take note of it. And if you do start to notice that your sales are slowing down, I subscribe to the Retail Council of Canada, so that's sort of like this RCC, and really understanding credit card transaction data. They tend to post, they did a post for Black Friday as well as Cyber Monday. They follow all of the MasterCard, Visa, Apple Pay data to see whether or not transactional spending is decreasing month over month. And I know this year their data showed that it was pretty flat throughout the summer, and then it started to pick up in August and September. So those are free resources. I don't pay to be part of Retail Council of Canada, but all of their resources and their webinars are free online. So I really encourage buyers or even store managers to subscribe to the Retail Council of Canada, because I find the more information that you can get, the better. It really helps you plan for the future. So really this top one, number 1, is really looking at a student and specifically parents' disposable income going forward. So the other one, number 2, is really what's happening on your campus that may impact spending or the amount of students on your campus. So really, number one is full-time enrollment. Is that growing? Is it shrinking? The federal government was talking about imposing an international student cap so that they would only allow a certain amount of international students to enroll in Canadian universities. I'm not sure that that's been officially made official, but if that does happen, that will definitely impact your sales as well as your size curve. So just keep note of what's going on out there. And affordable housing is a big issue for us here in Halifax and pretty much anywhere in Nova Scotia. It's probably the same thing across Canada. There's just our enrollment is increasing year over year, but there's not the housing for the students to live in. So that's a huge issue, let alone affordable housing. There's just no housing. So that will definitely impact full-time enrollment. And I know on our university website, all of those stats are public knowledge, so you can actually probably go onto university website and get the statistics for the amount of full-time enrollment, the amount of full-time enrollment per faculty, and what the gender split is, as well as what the international split is. So that information should be available to you, or you can request it from your statistics department on campus. The other thing that's impacted us, besides COVID for sure, with students being on campus, is university strikes. So we have had several strikes where either the faculty have striked or even janitorial strikes so that students aren't on campus or aren't fully on campus. And then the other thing really is one-off events. I know that the Mount St. Vincent just had 150th year anniversary, so that could drive some sales, but it's a one-off event for just that 1 year. We had the North American Indigenous Games in which there was 15,000 athletes in the summer. I was hoping it would drive sales. It didn't actually, but last year I had planned for there to be an increase in sales in the summer based on there being more traffic on campus in the summer. And I think the other thing I didn't put on the slide really has to do with digital textbooks. When I'm on the buyer-to-buyer calls with U.S. bookstores that have almost 100% converted to digital textbooks, the talk from the GM buyers is how do you drive students in store when they no longer have to come in the store to buy their textbooks. So I think that that's something that all of us will have to kind of keep on our radar, is the percentage of books that are flipping to digital so that the students no longer have to be physically in the bookstore to buy their textbooks and are not seeing all the great general merchandise that we have. And the number 3 really has to do with climate change. So for us in the East Coast, it's probably the same thing out west, I'm not sure, but our summers are becoming wetter and wetter. Like last summer, we sold out of raincoats, I can't tell you how many times, and it was, I think summer finally hit in September, October. And the winters are warmer, so we're not having to buy as much winter gear. So winter accessories, our sales are down in that. And, summer ball caps, our sales are down in ball caps. So it's just really being aware of what the trends are within your own sales. And so just keeping that in mind when you're planning your buys. So it doesn't always make sense to just, even if it's a core item, repeat the same quantity and the same item year over year. And then it seems like our shortages got way better this year, so I think we're out of that slump. But 2 years ago, when there was sea container shortages, there was thread shortages, there was color fabric shortages, there was issues with sourcing cotton. So there was a whole bunch of components within our supply chain that were being impacted and slowing things down for us to actually get the stock. So, which meant that we didn't necessarily have other stock on our shelves, and your sales would be impacted. So I just want to open it up to the floor. Are there any other macro trends that people kind of are aware of or are on their radar that they are watching for next year? Does this make sense to everybody, or are there, or is this kind of like, I don't know? Radio.
You got lots of thumbs up. I don't know if you can see them.
I can't see anything. I can't see anybody.
Yeah,
I'm assuming there's
I
people
know
on
it's
the
like you're
call.
talking into the void, hey?
I know,
No, yeah, lots and lots of thumbs up. So,
oh, good. Okay, there are
yeah.
people there. That's great. Thanks. Okay, next slide. And just let me know if I'm running out of time. Okay, so this is kind of the more fun part. So it's the fashion trends. What are Gen Zs interested in? Because Gen Z is really our demographic at the bookstore. So this has always been a little bit of voodoo science. Most of the data that I get, unfortunately, is from the U.S., and I know that the speaker next week is also from the U.S., but it's surveys from U.S. universities, U.S. universities, which is great. But I usually just do Google searches. I know it's not the best, but that's what I do to kind of get some general ideas of what is trending. There are also podcasts that I subscribe to that review what the fashion trends are going to be for the next coming season, which I find quite helpful. So really, for me, what we have noticed is like sort of the oversized trend, the androgynous trend. There's not so much of a slim fit or female fit. A lot of female students are wearing things that are really oversized and baggy or really, really tight and small. So like the sweatshirts are oversized, and also for the life of me, I could not sell open leg sweatpants 3 years ago. I almost have to give them away and write them off. But now this is the trend. It's like wide leg, elephant leg, maybe I think they call them, and also cargo pants. So and this is what I did last year is I saw this as a trend, and then I started asking other buyers of whether or not they were going to go with these open leg cargo pants and whether or not they were going to have them open leg or whether or not they're going to have them elastic bottom. So I got feedback from all of my peers to figure out whether or not it made sense to go with the cargo sweatpant, and we did bring them in, and they sold really quite well. So, and I'm just going to, there's a link here I'm just going to click into, and hopefully I can get back to this presentation. Just bear with me. Okay, fashion trends. Okay, so this is just, again, a Google search that I did, fashion trends for Gen Z, right? So really, one of the top ones is sustainable chic, and that's what I said. Really, it's looking at secondhand thrifting is a huge, I think it was like 7 or 8% of what Gen Zs are spending their money on, as well as sort of DIY fashion and being able to track the source of and all the steps along the way of where the products come from. And I don't know if any of you follow Brock online, or not Brock, sorry, Guelph online. They posted their collaboration with a company called Cotton last week. So again, that's a sustainable fashion brand that they have brought in store. And you can track pretty much from, I think they call it the farm to table of fashion. So be really interested, Mark, to see how that brand is doing for you guys in store. So again, they kind of go through different areas of what they're foreseeing Gen Z's wearing in 2024. Gender fluid, again, that's sort of that androgynous, larger style, retro, revival, and streetwear. So I just, as I said, I just Google it and see whether or not there's reoccurring themes across different articles.
There's some questions about your podcasts. Do you have any? Do you know the name of the podcast you listen to off the top of your head?
Well, it's not it's called Magic. I'll have to see if I can find it and send it out. So they're actually linked into a fashion trade show where you can source products directly from the manufacturers, and it's an American company, but they'll have magic shows in New York, Florida, and Vegas. And again, it is like a buying show, but you're buying directly from the manufacturer. Yeah, I can see if I can find that podcast, and I will send that through. All right.
Ethan just posted something in the chat too, that Magic Fashion Show might be the right one. So you guys can maybe take a look at that.
Who posted that?
Stephen did.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so he just Googled that. So that might be what you're talking about if somebody wants to take a little peek in there and let us know.
Yeah, and also fashion trends. I know a lot of universities, they can't actually go off their branding colors, but I think it's always good, like if you wanted to have a pop of color in your store, if you are allowed, if marketing will allow you to do that, I find it's very important to be on top of what colors are trending, as well as really looking at Aritzia and Lululemon, like the key brands for Gen Z, and understanding what color palettes they're using. I know they do multiple drops of different colors throughout the year, but there's a whole bunch of fashion weeks. So like there's New York, I think there's also Milan, Paris, and London, and they post their colors. And the Pantone of the year, I think, is going to be released pretty soon. I think it's kind of like this crazy orange color. I don't know. But again, this year was lavender. I know purple is definitely trending. For us, anything that's green, like a sage and emerald, all of the greens do incredibly well as the pale grays. It's almost like an ash color. But from what it looks like to me, the color's a little bit more bolder, a little bit brighter. Again, I don't know. I find this part kind of fun. So I like to check that out. And then, as I said before, check out where Gen Zs are shopping. So follow like Aritzia online, check out the website, figure out what their new silhouettes are. Jennie just bought a pair of pants, no idea what they're called, but they're flying off the shelves at Aritzia. Maybe Jennie, you want to chime in, but it's like this really, really soft, almost, it looks like dress pants, but it looks like it's made out of like a stretchy jersey material. I don't know.
It's like it's a mega trouser pant, and probably hearing that term a lot, the mega.
Yeah, wide legs.
Yeah, there's some really cool cuts, and I'm hoping some of our vendors will be bringing those to CSC.
Yeah, so like Aritzia, H&M, and Zara, I think, and Lululemon are really all sort of top brands. Aritzia is kind of more closely aligned with the products that we will have in store, because it's sweatshirts, sweatpants, kind of crop t-shirts, and so it's really helpful to watch what they are promoting, and also watch what they're marking down. That's what I find about following other bookstores. I like to see what they're posting, which is new, but I also like to see what they're marking down, because that's something that they tried that is slow in their store in general. And then I don't really have a great Gen Z influencer, so if anybody has any Gen Z influencers that they are watching to kind of get style ideas, please put it in the chat. I kind of follow one woman, and she kind of wears, I don't know, different outfits periodically. It all looks like very short skirts, high boots, and I don't know, chunky sweaters. But I also think I like to look at TikTok periodically. We can't access TikTok on campus, but I can access it on my own device. And looking at what the trending top songs are and seeing what people are wearing when they're dancing to those trending top songs, I always find helpful to kind of predict what the fashion trends are going to be. And number two, which is really the most important, is know your students, know your customers, because even though like a lavender oversized elephant cargo pant may work really well at Western or Guelph, it may not work in Calgary. So really understand like what your students are wearing. I sometimes just eat my lunch on the quad or in the student union, and I just sit there and watch what people are wearing. What brands are the students wearing? What colors are they wearing? What are their favorite brands and backpacks? So I find you got to know your customers, and you got to know what they like. But I think it's important to also feel comfortable to take risks and to try new stuff, because that's what's going to make your store fun. So again, this is me just Googling favorite Gen Z brands. A lot of this stuff is online. I'm sorry, this is a very small chart, but it's very insightful. It breaks it down into different categories. So you've got 13 to 17, 18 to 24, 25 to 36. As you can see, the Nike brand is number one. Doesn't matter how old you are, anywhere from 13 to 36, it's Nike. So last year when I found not this chart, but a similar chart, it made me really chase after Nike as a brand to bring it in the store, and that's why I decided to bring it in. That is the only reason why I decided to bring Nike into the store. And I asked a few other stores how it was doing for them, and it was all doing very well. So, and I've been very, very pleased with how well we have sold Nike. We are an Under Armour sports store. I got athletics approval to bring Nike in before I brought it into the store. It does not have our sports logo on it. It only has our university logo, but we sold out within the first 2 or 3 weeks of back to school. So it has been a very, very strong brand for us. And in my goals for next financial year, we will be expanding the assortment that I have for this brand in the store. But I found it, like, even here they talk about what females are wearing versus what's important, what brand's trending with males. So you'll see Lululemon here, as well as Supreme, and Supreme is a sweatshirt brand. And then with the men, there's Jordan, which I don't even know what that brand is, so I probably should look it up. Under Armour, Vans, and the North Face. So we also brought in the North Face as well. And I think I didn't have this breakdown of age. So I brought it in thinking it was more of a Gen Z brand, sort of in this area, but I think it was actually a little bit of an older demographic. So the backpacks did really well. The clothing was very slow for us. So I will probably bring the backpacks in, but the clothing for North Face was pretty slow. And, okay. And then after you kind of get some information about your students, and then also asking your part-time students, I tend to, if there's samples or there's vendors in the store, I will take the item and show the part-time students in the store to see whether or not they like the product or not, and that kind of gives me a general idea of whether or not it's a good or bad thing. I will also ask just random students in the store whether or not they think it's a good idea that we bring a certain brand in. Now, the other thing having to do with knowing what students are wearing is, as a buyer, I think it's very, very important to be on the floor at least once a week. I usually block off like Friday morning to try to be on the floor. I'm always on the floor at back to school. It allows you to hear what the students are talking about, whether or not they want something that that you do not have in the store. So again, you got to be on the pulse of what your students are asking for. So number 3 really is about vendors, and asking your vendors what's trending, and also asking your vendors what other bookstores are repeating on continuously. So that's a good indication that it's selling really well in not just one bookstore, but several bookstores. And even just like what's trending, what do they see as trending? So I know I asked one of my giftware buyers, and again, it's not a decorated product, it's just an undecorated giftware, and he had mentioned that mushrooms and gnomes were really strong. So I brought a bunch of mushroom products in, and they have done really, really well. And even there is a Sage group, which is a promotional products group. They will also publish their top trending promotional products, and this year by far was Stanley, or the Stanley Dudes. So that was the top promotional product for 2023. And I had something else I was going to mention. Oh, right. So, and I also know that vendors can be really good for trending colors. If anybody that purchases Herschel, they use a color branding forecasting agency, and you have to do the Herschel buys 12 months in advance. So you kind of get a general idea of what Herschel's color forecasting agency is predicting the top colors to be for next financial year. So I know it was like almost like a deep aubergine. There was like this color called burnt rubber, which is almost like a copper color, and a moonbeam or moon mist. Sounds kind of like an ice cream, but I think it's like a very light purple, not sure. But so I think that you should try to leverage your vendors and leverage their information, as well as if they do use forecasting agencies. That's also really helpful. Is there any questions about the trends for Gen Z, or do other people have other ways of getting this information?
I just want to echo the talking to your part-time student staff or to young full-time student staff who represent that Gen Z. We learn a lot from them. Like, there's me being all the time like, cargo sweatpants? Like, no, those are terrible. And they're like, no, they're cool. And I'm like, they're not though. I'm not cool is what I've learned.
Yes.
And and so I'm not our customer, and we really rely on them. The other thing we did just recently, it's the first time we've done it, we made a mall trip. All of us piled into the work van, went to the mall and looked at things and made notes, and we had really specific questions, and I thought that was really helpful to see what we looked at, like what were the decoration trends, like what was really, like how were things being decorated, and what were the colors that stuck out, and what type of sales were different stores running, and how are they kind of doing those business practices, and that I found very helpful as well.
Well, and that's what I'm hoping that in the trends presentation next week. I know that the U.S. student survey talks about logoing and logo placement and size of logo and what their students are preferring. So whether or not it's left chest, full front, arm, neck. So I find that information very helpful for if you want to try out different types of logoing so that it's not always the same thing year over year. Is there anybody else that follows somebody on Instagram or looks at certain magazines or not? No? Okay, I'm just going to continue on. So really we're looking at opportunities here. So what are hot sellers? And this is where I find going to the gift show or going to, CSC or any trade show where there's going to be university bookstore buyers together is what are hot sellers in their store? What flew out the door? And you can get some of that information from vendors, but you're never quite 100% sure how truthful it is. Other buyers will be completely honest with you. So I always, if I see something that's new on Instagram, I take kind of a note of that and I follow up later to figure out, okay, how did those gibbets sell at Laurier that they just launched last week? Did they fly off the shelves? Or, it was a great price point. I'd love to hear who your supplier was, Anita, for those, because I think a lot of us know that Crocs are definitely trending for our students and that gibbets are a neat way of taking advantage of that market without bringing in Crocs into the store. So, and again, as I said before, watch their markdowns and follow all university bookstores on Instagram. It literally takes less than 2 minutes a day to check in on Instagram just to see what's being posted by our colleagues across Canada. And even I follow some universities in the States that have similar colors to us. So there's a Towson University, I can't remember what state it's in, but their colors are black and gold and their mascot's a tiger. So that's exactly the same that we have. So I find it quite interesting just to see how they're decorating, what products they're bringing on store. Now, benchmarking is one of my favorite ways of looking for opportunities. So how does your store's sales compare to other stores of a similar full-time enrollment? I always look at it based on full-time enrollment. I'm not going to compare Dalhousie to UBC or to UFT or to Western. It's just not apples to apples comparison. And even when we're looking at full-time enrollment, so I know that Laurier, UVic, Brock, and Dalhousie all have similar full-time enrollment, around 20-odd thousand, but Jennie's store is 3 times the size of mine. So my retail selling space is 7,000 square feet. Hers is like 21, 27. I don't know. It's massive. It's a huge store. So there's certain things that you have to understand that there's never going to be a like-for-like comparison, but I think it's always helpful to look at what is the average in this group, small, medium, and large full-time enrollment stores, and where are you within that average? Are you above average or below average? And if you are below average, is it possible for you to grow your apparel industry so that you are at least at average or a little bit higher? So, and the only way you're going to know about that is with the CSC data this year. That's when I found out that Jennie's store was 3 times the size of ours. So I'm like, well, maybe I won't ever be able to get giftware sales that are the size of hers, but we have made the decision to grow our apparel. So our apparel is about the same across both stores, but giftware is still down. And I'm still looking at ways of growing giftware. But, and I also think you need to understand where the university is located, because there's certain universities, I think UBC is one of them. I've never been to their beautiful campus store, but that it is quite remote. Our bookstore is in downtown Halifax. There are stores all over the place. There's a Lululemon, Roots, 4 or 5 blocks away. So we are not sheltered. We do not have a captive customer. They can go pretty well anywhere very quickly. So I can't stress enough that if you haven't filled out the CSC data last year, that I do feel that it's a very, very valuable resource so that you can compare your store sales to other stores. And then with that, like 4 or 5 years ago, I looked at the LSG data and then figured out what stores I wanted to go visit, because, that I could. So I went to go visit Laurier, a Western, Fanshawe College. Fanshawe also has around 20,000 full-time enrollment. And I went to each one of those stores. I met with the buyers. I walked the floor. I tried to figure out, are there things that they have on their floor that we do not? And I can't, again, it's one of those things we have to learn from each other, and we're in a great opportunity that we're not competing against each other, and that visiting stores as well as talking to buyers at trade shows is the best way for us to learn from each other. And any of these like buyer-to-buyer calls that are set up by CSC or LSG, if you're part of LSG, are very important learning resources that helps GM grow within this environment. So, and I also have lists of questions that I like to ask other buyers, predominantly like, what item flew off your shelf? Or I saw you brought this item in, how did it do for you? What colors are trending well in your store? What was your top selling item at homecoming? So certain stores don't have certain campuses don't have homecoming. Our campus is not a big sort of rah-rah sports school, but other schools are. So I think when you're doing the comparison, just make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and understanding what the differences are. I know that what I learned doing some of these tours is that community colleges are quite a bit different than universities, but you can still learn from them. Their supply sales in general are much higher than university. They sell a lot of kits, and within those kits are items for classwork. So knife kits, electrical kits, plumbing kits, which are just not applicable to some of the courses that we have in the university environment. So I attend pretty much any buyer-to-buyer call, as well as the LSG calls or large store groups calls, and those are U.S. stores, and a lot of the trends will hit the U.S. before they hit Canada. And I find it interesting just to kind of get some ideas of what's happening in the U.S. as well as for events. So that's why I like to follow other university bookstores, is what events are they doing? And then again, asking at the trade show or even in an email, how did that event do for you? Is that something that you're going to repeat next year? Is there any questions anybody has in the opportunities section? Oh, okay.
Can I add something into events?
Yeah.
Okay. I think for events too, it's asking each other, not just the event, but how we ran it, and compare, like, did you, like, I'm going to use Black Friday, for instance, did you get a special buy brought in for that event, or was it a percentage off? And then kind of have that discussion and compare, was it successful? Because maybe that, like, for me, that kind of event is something that you want something new and exciting and you want to bring an item in for, but maybe other schools are doing other things for that event. But I think that's a really important thing, is to see not just that we are having events, but how we're running it.
Yeah, and I also agree to that point where a lot of people say, oh, my store's too small, I can't do a special buy. So just to kind of give you an idea, we also do a special buy for the main store as well as for our satellite store in Truro, which is like a remote agricultural campus store. And they have a full-time enrollment of less than 1,000 students. And the store is pretty much the size of a classroom, and there's no receiving, there's no nothing. And I normally will order that store 300 units, and they will sell roughly all of those 300 units in 3 days, and they only have 1,000 students on that campus. So don't necessarily think, oh, my campus is too small, I can't do a special buy. Like, there's ways to make it work. Okay. So now that you've done your review, you kind of looked at your trends, now it's time to plan. So it's really laying out your plan for next financial year, which will in turn help you figure out what you want to buy at the trade show. So what are going to be your main sales goals? And I'm really looking at new things. So a lot of that is new brands that you're going to bring in. So like this year, we will be bringing in the Stanley water bottle. We may bring in another clothing brand. I'm not 100% sure on that one yet. And then what categories are we going to expand? And I already mentioned to you that Nike did quite well for us, so we're probably going to expand the SKUs within that Nike range. And what are other marketing events you're going to hold? So maybe you are going to do a special buy this year, or you did one special buy and maybe you're going to do 2 this year. So what does that look like? If your plan for growth, as I said, one of mine this year was not to be out of stock. What does that mean for you? Is that doing pack and holds? Is that setting up a stock management program with one of your vendors? And are there certain categories where you're constantly seeing it trending down? So for us, supplies has been down year over year, and predominantly that has to do with what's happening within the book world. So things are going digitally. A lot of classwork is being taken on an iPad. People are no longer using pen and paper. The digital or the printed loose leaf textbooks, we no longer have any in store, so people are not needing to buy binders to put them in. So there's a lot of things happening within the textbook side that are impacting supplies. So is there another kind of angle within supplies to get growth, or is it just going to continue to trend down year over year? So that is always a question that I have, that I ask other buyers is, how are your supplies sales doing? Is there a category within supplies that's doing really well for you in your store that we may be able to take advantage of? Yeah, and if you think you can get a little bit more growth out of certain categories, how are you planning on doing that? So normally growth happens by either increasing your retail price, getting people to buy more of an item. So that can be doing multiple seasonal drops. So you've got more fresh and new product throughout the year, which drives people into the store. Yeah. So really looking at sales and profit. I also look at what are going to be my sales goals by vendor. So this year, so far I've noticed that our rugby shirts are trending down. So I probably will not do the same volume of buying next year within rugby as I did this year. So again, that will kind of, that sales number will allocate a certain amount of dollars that I'll be able to spend with that vendor. I always ask for catalogs in advance just so that I can actually almost create a collection in my head before I actually go to the show and touch and feel what the product is. And then sometimes when I see it in person, I'm like, nah, I don't think that's really going to work. But it gives me an idea of what can I kind of group together, what colors can I put together that will create a new kind of seasonal fresh collection in the store. And then also ask vendors if there's any show specials that they can take advantage of. So sometimes there's a special price point or free freight. Now the free freight I find is specific to the gift show. I don't see a lot of free freight at the CSC show. And again, outcomes. I always go with questions for vendors, questions for other buyers. And I do actually create a shopping list. So after I looked at the catalogs, after I figure out what my goals are going to be, and generally kind of just ponder on what are new ideas that we could bring into the store, and allocating revenue to those ideas, what items do I have to buy in order to fill out those goals for the year? Okay. And I think we're almost at the last slide, so we're almost under an hour, which is great. So again, what to bring to the trade show? So I always bring a calculator, I bring the catalogs, and I also sometimes bring my shopping list for sure, and my assortment plan. So I actually bring this document with me. So I have trending colors, trending styles, and then the questions I want to ask other buyers. Again, I can't stress the value of this opportunity to be with all the buyers together for several days. We need to learn from each other, and that's the only way we're all going to grow together, and that's how we're all going to be financially stable going forward as a group. And also looking at to take advantage of the can-call pricing. Sometimes it's not available at the show, but it's usually pretty soon after the show to know what can-call vendors. And again, what to ask vendors, as I said, like pack and hold, special deals, and whether or not whether or not they can do a stock management program. So that's really all I have to say. I don't know if anybody else has any questions.
Any questions, guys? That was awesome. I know I learned a ton. I really like the methodical nature of how you think through your plan and your year. I know being methodical and being thoughtful in how you do this it takes a lot of effort, but it must set you up to be able to track your metrics very well and to really understand how that's going. So that's fantastic.
Well, for me, I think it's really important that the director or the manager of your store understands what your plan is, and that it's because that's the only way that everybody's going to be on the same page. It's really hard for someone to set a budget for you and for you to have to kind of fit your plan into that budget. I'm a strong believer that buyers need to be a part of that budget process, and maybe that's not for all buyers, but I do feel that it's important that buyers are involved so that there is a plan in place of how you're going to attain those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so wise. It's nice to say, oh, we're going to bring in, I don't know, $500,000 in clothing this year, whatever your number is. But if you don't have a plan to get there, it's sort of just a wish, right? A goal without the plan is really just.
And if we are in a recession and sales are going to be tight next year, it's important to be really upfront with that so that you're not planning. And the post-COVID years have been really hard. Like I kind of feel like this is maybe the new normal this year. And, because right after COVID, you had the double cohort. And so I don't know. It's been very hard, I found, from a buyer's perspective, to plan since COVID or during COVID, after COVID. And hopefully things are now normal. I don't know. But yeah.
I have one other thing to just add for, I think that everybody should just put on their list to ask vendors is to always ask if there's like a sustainable option or what steps they're doing towards sustainability. I think that's a really important thing just to even ask and have part of your dialogue with every vendor you're talking to. Even if they don't have a plan yet or the item that you're actually looking for, it's nice to know what they do have, or they might not even have brought it to the show thinking that it wasn't something that we were interested in. That the MB Sport sustainable shirt that you said you got this year, I've had that one for probably 3 or 4 years now. And they didn't bring it to the show the first year I got it, but I was like, I want something sustainable. What do you have? And it's done really, really well for us. It has more probably Gen Z fashion forward design on it because it's kind of targeting that demographic, but it's done really well. So I think that's just something that is a good question and a nice icebreaker for vendors.
Yeah. So, and that's a nice, all of this is in preparation for the show. So if you guys just want to, let's just do a little bit of interactiveness here. If you can put your hand up, who's going to the show? Awesome. So Lots of hands are going up. And if you're going to the show, you know, like Katrina really stressed, connecting with each other is really going to help us all to grow. Who's going for the very first time? Is anyone? You can put your hand back up again. Yeah, there's so lots of first-time people going. So don't be shy when you go to the show. Make sure you're spending the time, like, so be bold. Nobody's going to say, get out of this group, you don't belong here. Like, nobody's going to be mean or rude. Just go and talk to some people, introduce yourself, ask what's going on. The other thing I'd like to challenge you all, if you're coming to the show, we have 2 great education sessions that both Katrina and Jennie have been planning along with a number of other people in this group. One of them is roundtable, so you're going to get a survey pretty soon about questions you want to have discussions about. And then the other one is we're going to ask you guys to either bring or have your vendor bring some of your new or top or best products to the show so everyone can touch and feel. But we want you to bring metrics. So as Katrina was saying, you got to review, you got to know your metrics. Like, what's your sell-through? How many did you initially bring in? You have to, you know those things so that we can really have discussions that are meaningful and that can be transferred between stores of different sizes. So if I say, oh, we brought in 300 of them and I'm 3 times your size, right? It gives you a bit of a different perspective on what we're doing. So yeah, go ahead. We've got a question. No, you're just raising your hand? Okay, perfect, awesome. Sometimes you just got to practice hitting the buttons at the bottom. It's all good. Yeah, so a couple more things. If you want to go to the show and you haven't signed up, definitely think about doing that sooner than later. And then if you're feeling like you need anything to get prepped for the show, please reach out to Stephen or myself or anyone else on the CSC board. Like, if you're not sure what to expect or you have a little bit, yeah, Stephen just put the link in the chat for the conference. So if you have any questions about it or you're not sure how to get the most from the show, definitely reach out and maybe we can buddy you up with an old timer and or something like that. Old timer. It's not maybe the best choice of words, but you know, whatever. We're gonna roll with it. So don't be shy because this is like this conference is for you. So getting the most out of it is important. That also in preparation. The trend session Katrina was referencing is actually on Thursday this week. So December 7th. So it is at the same time as this call, so 10 Mountain, 12 Eastern. You'll have to do your own time calculations because I always have to think really hard to do them. So don't forget to come to that. Pop that in your calendars now. Pop in. So it's like Katrina was explaining. It's survey results from students. They're U.S. students, so maybe a bit ahead of where Canada is, but that's also kind of cool because then you can maybe get a little forecasting to see what's coming. Yeah, I'd love a discussion in the trend session or at the show about what sustainability means for you, says Charlotte. 100%, right? Like, you know, we're all like recycled material, but then now people are saying recycled material is terrible because it takes the bottles out of the cycle and puts them into a shirt, which is then thrown in the garbage. And, you know, so 100%, I love that. What does that sustainability mean to you? That's a great discussion topic, and we should have it. Will there be a recording of the Thursday? Yes, Stephen? Thursday? Yeah? Okay, awesome, yes. Awesome, perfect. Any other questions? You guys can unmute yourselves so you don't have to listen to me ramble on. Did everyone come away with a little nugget here? You know, I came away with many nuggets. So, yeah, many nuggets of wisdom. So I'm excited about that. Charlotte's got her hand up.
Sorry, I just have a question.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any vendors that make products in Canada other than Barbarian, like clothing?
I use Stanfield's, which is a Nova Scotia company, and it was great because I actually got to tour their textile mill because they actually make the fabric in Nova Scotia They have a cut and sew floor. They've been around for, I don't know, 200 years or something. And I know that our local hockey team, the Mooseheads, has actually moved their entire promotional product clothing range over to Stanfield's. It's not cheap. The T-shirts are really reasonably priced. I can retail those for under $24.99. The hoodies are very hot, heavy product. So, and I know that there's quite a few other companies. I've got a few that are Canadian, out of Montreal. Yeah, I think Dubco doesn't manufacture the product. They're basically reselling another Canadian brand. But yeah, there's quite a few. And the cotton brand that Guelph brought in, I think, is made in Canada.
I think they were, from when I was in contact with them last year, from my understanding, that it's all made in Turkey. So
Okay.
I guess that was kind of along with my question, like sustainability means something different to everybody.
It does.
And I think like this Gen Z, they're very aware and they understand greenwashing. I feel like the term is kind of overused a little bit nowadays. And I think a lot of people want to see more products made in Canada versus sustainable offshore products personally. So I feel like there's a sense of awareness around that. And I feel like that's kind of important to bring to light possibly.
Well, and it would be nice at the show if there was sort of like a Canadian made section. Like it is very hard when we do your like Canada Day feature of Canadian made products because there isn't a lot that's still made in Canada. Especially there's not very many textile mills left in Canada where they're actually making the fabric here. So, I mean, that's why I found it really interesting to actually do we can't tour the manufacturing facilities of, almost 100% of where our product comes from. So it was really interesting to be able to actually go to their facility to see them making the product. But I do have a whole document on Canadian made companies that I can send to you if you want.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
And Charlotte, can you just put your email in the chat?
Awesome. Any other questions? So a couple more things. Greg sent an email around this past, I don't know, I think it was Friday it went out. It was an in case you missed it. There's a ton of information on that. One thing I'm going to encourage everyone to do, there's a survey, and this is not the store survey. This is how you feel about the different offerings that we do at CSC. So this is one of them. The conference is another one. How you connect within your industry. So if you haven't taken the time to do that, we ask everybody to do that, not just your store manager, because we want to understand how CSC is valuable or what can be made better for all different roles that are CSC stores. So please take the time to do that. It won't take you that long. And yeah. Beyond that, I hope we get to see you all on Thursday. Any other questions, comments, or we can all just maybe give a big round of applause to Katrina and Jennie. That was an amazing presentation. Huge thank you for doing that. Oh, Craig's got his hand up. Anita's, nope, they're putting him down. Maybe they're just clapping. Anita's got her hand up. Nope, maybe just clapping. Okay, we're good. Awesome.
I guess I just wanted to ask one more thing. Is there anything else that people use to plan for the show? Or did we pretty well cover it all?
So one thing I didn't use to plan, but because I was going and I was the only person from my store last year, is I was sending back like photos and information on our Slack channel, so back to the appropriate buyers. So I don't know if anyone wants to kind of think about how you might do that. So I use my phone to make a big, almost like like just like a running conversation with my buying team. So if there's people who can't go to the show, you might do that. So it's not really planning, but that's what I did at the show to help other people.
And I know for me, I find it really important to involve whoever is doing the merchandising if you're fortunate enough to have a really talented person or group that does the merchandising for your store, because if you, like, we flipped our entire store around this year, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of planning to do that. So when you have your plan, I think it's important to involve as many people that are going to be touched by that plan as possible, so that it's not a big surprise that ladies wear is now gift wear, and supplies is now ladies wear or whatever, right? So it's just make sure everybody's on board and part of the planning process.
And Karen wrote that she brings existing inventories to the show. So yeah, I think that's, bringing all your numbers with you. What do you have in your pack and hold? What do you have in your store? What do you have on order? Knowing those things so that that's great planning. Anything else, guys? Well, as always, you're all fantastic. Thank you for spending a bit of your morning here with us today, or your afternoon as the case may be. And again, huge thank you to Katrina and Jennie for coming on and spending the time. And we'll hopefully see you on Thursday. Take care, guys.